Today is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026, and Kurt and I are grooving on finding common ground because of some recent experiences in Minneapolis with ICE agents. Now, Kurt and I both lived in Minneapolis when George Floyd was killed, but since then I've moved away. The experience for Kurt is meaningfully different than it is for me, I have to tell you. Now, over the past month, there have been a heightened focus on Minneapolis due to the ICE surge with over 3,000 agents operating in and around the Twin Cities. Now, this past Saturday, the fallout of this surge hit very, very close to home for Kurt. The death of Alex Preddy was just a few blocks away from Kurt's home, and with that proximity comes a heightened sense of experience. Let's talk about that. So, Kurt, walk us through it. What got us here?
Yeah, Tim, thank you. It's been an interesting month or so here, and I want to start with that. I want to start moving backwards to kind of set the context of what we're going to talk about, because about a month ago, a little over a month ago, the surge started here. And so I live in a neighborhood that is homes, families, friends around me. There's apartment complexes, but it's a neighborhood. This is not a big city kind of thing. It's yards and families and very different things. And we walk out in the neighborhood all of the time. A month ago, or even a little bit before that, it started to change the tension, the energy. We became more frightened. We started hearing stories from our neighbors, from my friends, about things that were happening. The school there, my kids went to elementary school, started having meetings on this. They had meetings that were about constitutional observers that my wife went to, which we had no clue what that was about. They were telling stories of kids who weren't coming into school because their parents were too afraid to go outside because they thought they were going to be detained and taken away, even if they were here legally. So 60 plus kids weren't there. We went before Christmas. We delivered food to many of those families. We delivered Christmas gifts to those families. So it started being real for us. We talked with them, and they were talking about this fear, even though many of them were here legally. They had green cards. All of that just changed. And then you saw the things in the local media, pictures from your friends' social media accounts where they're going out and people are coming, ICE agents are coming into their neighborhood. They're going out to record this. They're going out to what's going on. These are my neighbors. These are my friends. And you're seeing the response from the ICE agents. And they're not doing this in a way, at least from the perspective of what I've seen, that allows for people to act in and express their First Amendment rights. They get shoved and yelled at and threatened over and over. The number of times that we see agents that are in the local Costco parking lot, at the local gas stations, it's amazing that they're not targeting just these criminals. They are just doing a random search, which, according to everything I understand, is illegal. And that's what we're hearing. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that happen over and over and over again.
When you say seeing, I just want to clarify, you've actually been to some of these protests. You've been
Yes.
you've been on the ground around these areas. And as you said, as I mentioned in the setup, um, Alex Preddy died within proximity of, Glamdal Donuts, a place that you
Yeah.
frequent with your kids and your family on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
And I'd be interested, because I don't actually like calling them protests, because I don't think that these are ICE agents coming into our neighborhoods, and we're going out into my block, into the block next door to us, to you know see what's going on, to do this. This isn't about, like, oh, we are marching on this date. Those are happening as well,
Yeah.
but that's
Some of
not
this is
what.
just like, you're in my neighborhood.
You're in
What's
my
going
neighborhood.
on?
I'm driving. I was talking with a woman the other day. She was driving home with her kids in the car, and ICE agents were surrounded the park next to her. And then, they're letting off tear gas canisters, and She has young kids in her car. I mean, this is happening all over all the
Yeah.
time. And then the stories that we hear. So a friend of my daughter's mom was taken over a month ago. She is a legal immigrant, has been here for many, many years, worked at the local children's hospital, was picked up before Christmas on her way to work. Car was left at a gas station. She was detained, had a 1 minute call with her daughter, 15-year-old daughter, got sent to Texas, was down in Texas for over a month, had another 5 minute call with her daughter. And then they said it might be 2 or 3 months. Luckily, she was released and she's back home now, but it was over a month. And
Why,
this is a
why was she
50,
released? What?
because she's legal. They had nothing to hold her on. She is a legal immigrant in here legally. And those are stories we hear over and over and over. And you can probably hear the passion in my voice
Yeah.
because this is what we're experiencing living here. This is my reality. This is what I am hearing from people that I trust and believe, seeing with my own eyes. All
Yeah.
right. So I'm setting
Yeah.
that context up
Great.
because last Saturday, I wake up to a text from my neighbor saying there was another shooting outside of Glam Doll Donuts. Now, Glam Doll Donuts is a few blocks from my house. It is the donut shop where we go. I've been there frequently. The video machine in the back was programmed by a friend of my daughter's. It has a special game on it. I mean, these are the places that we know. And so my wife and I decided we just need to see. This is our community. We need to see what is happening. So we bundled up as we're
Because it
leaving.
was
We go, oh, we
cold.
better grab our goggles, not that we were wanted to cause damage or anything, but we'd seen what was going on. We walked the few blocks down there. We met up with a number of our neighbors. We saw friends that we knew that were there. We're all just out there. Now, there's a bunch of other people that have gathered around. By this time, barricades have gotten up. There was a whole presence of ICE cordoning off 2-3 block radius around where the killing happened. And we were just there. We were observing. I was taking video. I was asking questions of some of the ICE agents. I was emotional, but I was like, why are you in my neighborhood? Why are you here? We didn't have this before. This was the place where I would come with my kids to get donuts. This is where we go to the German restaurant that's right here to have German beer and Rumtopf. Have you ever had Rumtopf, Tim?
Yeah. Yes, at the Black Forest, of
At the
course.
Black Forest. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
fantastic place. It is
Yeah.
the Lou's Sandwich Shop, one of the best sandwich shops in the entire nation. And all of this is happening. So I'm really emotional, and I'm like, I want to understand why you're here. What do you think you're accomplishing? Because it's not working. It's not doing what you're trying to do. You're actually creating chaos, and I'm trying to express that. And I know it's not going to change that ICE agent's mind, but I felt it felt like I needed to get that off of my chest. I felt like I
Yeah.
needed to express that, and so I was doing that. Um, they backed off. Again, lots of protesters there. There was lots of people screaming, lots of people yelling, but there was no threatening. Nobody was throwing anything at them. Nobody was throwing snowballs or rocks. Nobody had, pitchforks or hockey sticks even, right? This is Minnesota. But
But
none of that, right?
but you, along with other people, had phones and you were recording.
Exactly. We were recording, we were there. People were shouting. I mean, they were shouting mean things, but there wasn't a sense that this was threatening. There was no going up against the little yellow tape that they had. Most people were 3-5 feet behind, if not further. When all of a sudden, flashbang happened, tear gas canisters went off, rubber bullets or pepper bullets, I don't know which, were being sprayed. And I'm videotaping all of this and I'm backing away, having tear gas get in my face. And if you guys have never had tear gas, it is not a pleasant experience. And this is happening in my neighborhood. And I'm like, I can't understand it. It looks like something you would see in Mogadishu. It looks like something you would see in a war-torn area. And this is the street that I frequent. It is the
Yeah.
street that I live,
Yeah.
that I don't live on it, but that I go to these things that I just talked about.
Yeah. So what did you do with the video? What
So
take
then
take us from
later that
there?
day, I posted a few of those videos. I posted them out on Facebook. And at first, I was, some people would respond, people that we know, many of them saying, "Oh, be safe," "Thank you for sharing this, all this." And then there were a few that started like, "Well, you shouldn't have been out there in the first place. Why are you doing this?" And I tried to have conversations with those people. I tried to say, "Here's what I'm seeing. Here's just what I was saying before. I was telling those
Yeah.
stories. I was telling the stories of the 17-year-old kid who is a legal resident who got tackled outside of his house. And he goes, my passport is inside. Let me go get my passport. And they wouldn't let him. They took him, they tackled him. They put him in cuffs. They took him down to the station. This isn't right. And so that's the feeling that we're seeing here. And I'm trying to explain that to these people. And, some of them we had some going back and forth. Um, Mostly, again, I'm trying, me, I'm trying to be the scientist in this, even though my emotions are running high. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And there's
but
lots of comments on one of these posts.
but then
There's
this
many
one
comments.
of these videos goes viral. It as of lately, it's over 100,000 or 100,000 views, 110, 111, somewhere in there. And the comments I got, we had over 600 comments. And the comments just started going downhill. It obviously got on some right wing um, people, and it got forwarded to them. And there's a fair amount that I'm pretty sure were bots, but it was a very vitriol, angry, hurtful type comments, and then parroting a lot of very the same narratives. If you don't go, you shouldn't have gone out there. None of this would have happened if you wouldn't have been protesting. Uh, you know, why are you protecting rapists and murderers?
Yeah.
Uh, think about, it is Obama's fault. This is Mayor Fry or Governor Walls's fault. There were about four themes that were coming up. And then there was a fifth one, which is the ones who were like, they're Nazis, the ICE agents are Nazis and Gestapo, they're out to kill us and different things. And so there's on the other side as well. It's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
piece. But I shut that down like the next day because it was just it got, I mean, they were calling, me hateful things, and I'm a effing idiot. I'm a retard. I mean, it was just, and then there were some of them that, kill them all, kill all the protesters and different things. And even people I had really tried to express, like, why are you thinking this? Why are you thinking that this is it? Like, one woman who I had a comment in is who was saying it was about, I don't care about the protesters, any, if I could stop one rapist from happening. And I go, at the cost of two lives. And she goes, I don't give a shit, basically. And it was like, okay, I mean, I guess that's your opinion. I'm not going to change that. But it was very interesting to see in retrospect. In the moment, it maybe wasn't so interesting.
It was not. I talked to
But
you.
in
Right.
retrospect, it was interesting to see these two worlds. And that was part of what I was trying to accomplish with this, was to say, look, the algorithms that you guys are seeing may not be showing you the lived reality that I'm seeing on the ground. And I just want you to see that. I
Mhm.
don't necessarily want you to agree. I don't think you will change your beliefs and agree with me on what is being done, but I want you to know that this is true, that this is reality, that I'm not a paid agitator. My neighbors who are out there are not paid agitators. There are no, I mean, 99.9% of the people that are out here are not paid agitators. It was negative 10 degrees, I think, that day. You couldn't pay me enough to go out and do that, right? That's not how this works here. This is not Minnesota. We are neighbors. We help people shovel their driveways when they can't do it, shovel their walks. That's what we do here. And that was, I wanted them to see that as
Yeah.
what's going on.
Excellent. Thank you for that setup. Okay, so that kind of brings us to the primary question that we want to examine from a behavioral science perspective. And our group question for today is, how do we have rational discourse when we see the world so differently? Especially when we actually have so much in common.
Yeah.
That's what we want to explore today. So Kurt, you have been living this dream nightmare. It's been really challenging for you,
Yeah.
but you are a scientist. You are coming back to this from a scientific perspective. What are some of your first observations? What are some of your first thoughts?
So we've talked about this, right? In prepping for this. And one of the things that I think is the underlying a lot of this is that humans are not necessarily truth-seeking machines. We're identity-seeking machines. We want to belong. And it was readily apparent in these comments very quickly. I mean, you could tell by the words they're using, what camp, what group, what tribe people belong to.
Yeah.
And that has certain connotations with it, So, I mean, do you align with that?
Yeah, I do. And we do it. I think that we want to belong for lots and lots of really good reasons. And our identities are important to us, but we're not actually the creators of all of our identities. We actually end up giving a lot of our identity creation over to the communities because, I've said this for a long time. I know that the earth is round. How do I know? My mom told me.
I saw it in my science book in fourth grade.
Well, eventually I did see a science book, but I didn't go out and measure it. I came to know that because the first community, my home, my family, informed me of this is what is true. And then that got, supported by what I learned in school. And so I come to know that the earth is round from this. I haven't gone out and measured it, but I take it from the communities that I've been a part of that inform me and help shape my opinion that the earth is round. And in this political world, I think that there's a bit of an echo chamber that we have the message coming from our community of this is how our community thinks about this. And that informs me. And then I think, well, I want to be a part of this community. And it's not conscious. I mean, I don't do it consciously, but I absolutely do it. I absolutely end up feeling like, well, to some degree, I kind of want to be a part of that community. So I want to signal, I want to actually say, well, this is what I believe in.
Yeah.
And then that actually kind of creates a set of expectations, which then informs the way I experience. And there's this loop, this rather unvirtuous loop in some ways of just the way that human beings' minds work.
And I think there's another aspect of this, which I'm seeing, I'm observing, is that there are people in power or influencers who are trying to gain, people to follow them. There's monetary components, there's political power components within there, but they're taking advantage of that because what they're doing is they're spinning a narrative that allows the people in that tribe to not have to think, because now I can just parrot the narrative that comes out. So again, I'm just taking Alex Preddy. The first comment that came out from, the federal Kristi Noem was he was a domestic terrorist coming in with a gun, trying to instill, as massive damage. We can pretty much, 100, not 100%, but 99.99999% discount that to whatever degree with all of the other information that has come out subsequent to that.
But that absolutely informs the tribe.
And that's what I heard. It was like,
Yeah,
in subsequent, pieces of this, it's like, why did he bring a gun? And, he was just out there. He was a terrorist. The same thing happened to Renee Good in the car driving accident that had happened just 3 weeks before all of this. Is the narrative got spun, and that narrative actually influences how we see the world. And I mean, I'll go back to Solomon Ash, right? I mean, the line studies.
exactly, exactly. Well, let's walk through the Solomon Asch studies because it's about conformity.
It's
Uh,
it it is. It's this conformity aspect. So in Solomon Ash's studies in the 50s and 60s, basically he had people come in. They thought they were part of a group, but unbeknownst to them, they were the only really participant in this. Everybody else was an actor,
yeah.
and they would show up on a wall pictures of four lines, and they would go, "Which one is the longest?" And they would
And
go
all
there.
the lines were different. Were
All
different.
the lines are different sizes, right?
Yeah.
Different heights,
Mhm.
and A, B, C, D, right? And they would go through, and they person number one, it's A. Person number two, it's A. Person number three, A. Right? And when
And
they
if you're
did,
person number four, what do you say?
you say A. And so this is the interesting thing. So they started off, a couple of them were real, and they followed it through, and then at some point, everybody before you started to say A when you're going, it's line B. B is definitely longer.
Right.
And I'm not sure the exact percentages, so don't quote me on this, but it was over 60, 70% of
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
ended up conforming, saying, discounting their own eyes, not
Literally.
believing what they saw
Yeah.
because six people before me said it was line A. Something must be wrong with me if I'm not seeing line A.
Yeah.
So it must be line A.
And Ash found this when the four lines that he showed were in relatively similar length and dissimilar. Like
Yes.
the effect stayed the same, even when things were pretty much clearly out of whack. There was still this 60+% degree of agreement, of this compliance. And it is completely unconscious. It is not people being aware that they're going against their what they're actually seeing with their eyes. Their brain is processing it so fast and on such a subtle level and such an unconscious level is just, they're just like, well, okay,
They
it
they
must be
feel the
line A.
sense of angst, but obviously there's this piece going on. I mean, and another aspect of this is confirmation bias. Our brains are wired to identify and focus in on things that confirm or support our pre-held beliefs.
Yeah.
And at the very same time, to discount or even ignore anything that doesn't
Yeah.
align with our pre-held beliefs.
Right.
I saw this very, very apparent in many of these comments, right? And many of these things. So if I'm telling this story of my lived experience, the viewpoint that I'm trying to share either got dismissed. You're not from Minneapolis. You're a liar. That was it. Or um, you didn't see the whole story. You don't
Yeah.
know what actually happened. I'm going. I was there. They must have been threatening those ICE agents. They
Right.
must have been. And
But in fact, you weren't there before the shooting and the killing. You
no,
weren't
I don't know what happened in the shooting.
you weren't there all day.
No.
But this actually brings up an important point. Jonathan Haidt, in his moral foundations theory, started to understand that there's a real difference between believers and skeptics. And when we
Yes.
like, if you're a believer in something, you can look at something that's a little on the iffy side and said, "Can I believe that?"
Yeah. Well, that's the question that you ask, right? I love this part.
Right?
Can I believe that?
Can I believe that? And there's sort of this wanting to believe. Like we want to be able to believe that. If we're a believer, if we support things in general, we're like, our minds are just so efficient at figuring out how to bend things enough to accommodate our beliefs that we kind of go, I think I can believe that.
Yeah, it's
I
motivated reasoning. If I believe
yes.
that, it
Yeah.
supports where I am. So can I, is there anything that would make it so I cannot believe that? And if there's
And
not saying that is well supported or anything, but that is
yeah.
a very different perspective than what a skeptic would say, as Jonathan talks about, right? What does a skeptic ask?
Jonathan Haidt's view of the skeptic is asks the question, do I have to believe all of it? Do I
Yeah.
have to believe that? And having to believe is sort of in that area where you start to say it's very logic oriented. And it's like, if I start to see something that doesn't hold logical support of what you're saying you believe in, I can dismiss it.
Yeah.
I can find a way to dismiss that and say, I don't believe that because of all these logical things. And this happens on both sides of these arguments
Oh, exactly.
right, that we have believers and we have skeptics. And because of these tribal community affiliations that are so deeply important to us, that it not that it clouds our thinking, it just informs our thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, this comes down to another aspect of this. And what I saw in these posts, I did an analysis. I ran it through ChatGPT, had it run looking for themes and various different pieces of
The
it.
scientist, yeah.
Yeah, of course, but it was very interesting because this also comes down to the focus of harm, and it just goes into Jonathan Haidt again, right? Where we're looking at, the moral foundations of where we are. And the people who were supportive of ICE and saying I was an idiot and why were you out there and it's all, all these, and many of them, particularly the ones who were focused in on you're protecting rapists and murderers, which I can talk about. Like, I don't see that because that's not what I'm seeing them being picking up the people like that. That's a whole separate aside. But their focus is on the harm that is being caused
Yeah,
by the people that are immigrants here illegally.
right.
And they're saying, look at all the damage that they are doing. Look at the pain and suffering that they're bringing
Mhm.
versus the people on the other side who are here and my neighbors. I would say again, much of them in agreement with me, who are saying, but look at the harm that ICE is doing. Look at the deaths. There are three people actually. If there's another death that is supposedly somebody happened while they were in prison, that are associated with what's going on in the last month,
Right.
last 3 weeks.
So both are harm-based concerns.
Right. But where is that harm coming from? And when I tried to maybe express my harm perspective with the others, they got instantly dismissed.
Mhm.
Instantly. I don't, as one woman said, when I said, what about the two deaths? I don't give a F about those. They can all die for what I care. Something I paraphrased there. But
Yeah.
that was the actual response
And
because we're breaking the law. There's also this law and order piece, right?
yeah.
Like, okay, you guys are breaking the law, but no, ICE is breaking the law. So you have a different perspective on who is breaking the law. And when I bring up, do I have a First Amendment right to express myself, to have assembly? And then I get the pushback, yes, but you
Yeah.
can't do it this way. You can't
Mhm.
do it, and I'm like going, I never, we weren't. I'm not, but you must. Obviously, that's another part of this.
Yeah. So are we what else would you like to cover here? Because I think that there are some things that we should say that there are things that you shouldn't do if you want to actually get to this common ground space.
Yeah.
I want to come back to common ground.
Yes.
But is there anything else you want to cover in terms of experience or the behavioral
So,
science behind this?
well, this is, I think we can bring a behavioral science perspective on this, but what was interesting, there's a couple very interesting notes on this, is that some of the people that I was actually trading comments with, not just people putting up, you're effing idiot and, go home and, you liberal
Yeah.
retards, etc. Excuse me. And I apologize for the language here. So, but that's what they're saying. But there were people that you and I both know, or that I know,
Yeah.
that
No,
are
no,
pushing back against this. And
you and I have had working relationships for
working
15
relationships,
years.
one went to my high school, different pieces. And it was like there's this tick for tat almost. And I went back to one of them and I said, you know me. You know me. I'm not a radical. I'm not out there trying to cause. And that calmed everything down to a degree. It was like, yeah, Kurt, you're not a radical. I know you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like going, why did it take me, why did that reminder actually have to come in to calm this down? Because,
Yeah.
the anonymity of being online, I think, allows for this, even when you know the person. Um, and it's kind of like signaling, it's this, and again, but it's parroting these words. And again, it's this, I have a strong belief about this, and this is the harm that I'm seeing, this is the reality that I'm seeing. And I'm saying we live in these worlds where the algorithms are showing you one one perspective. They're
Yeah.
cutting things off. They're showing you one angle of this. They're not showing you all of that. And that happens on both sides, and it happens to me. And I try as much as I can, because we're scientists and I understand this, to get outside of that bubble. But I'm sure I don't do it all the time. But I wanted to listen to these people. I wanted to hear their perspective, but I wanted them to be aware of my perspective and understand that I am not making this stuff up. I'm not trying to do this because I have an agenda. I'm doing this because I live here. This happened in my neighborhood, and it's affecting my community. It's affecting my friends, my family, everybody. So I thought that's an interesting part. Oh, and
Well,
then
go
you have a
ahead.
question, but I
No,
do
go
want to
ahead.
just say there's heart in this too. So a friend of our families, who we are on polar opposite sides of the political spectrum, polar opposite, right? He considers himself, he goes, even in this last post, he said something about, if you couldn't tell, people would call me MAGA, right?
Yeah.
And he wrote a very nice, like, comment at the very of the over 600, right before I shut it down. He said, please stop. I know Kurt, he's a friend. Anyway, I'm getting choked up, but
Yeah. 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 Yeah, man. Because it's real. Like when it's with real people, it makes a huge difference, right? When people stand by your side and say, "Look, this isn't all right."
yeah,
And I go back to an experience that I had with a good friend of mine from high school. As we graduate from college, he goes off and he starts a business, has a very successful business. But Bill was he struggled his whole life with depression and had some mental health issues. And yet
yeah,
he built a construction company that was so significant. He was doing these major projects like bridge rebuilding,
yeah,
freeways and stuff. Like these are major projects. And he was a hardworking guy and a successful guy. And yet underneath all of it, he had a ongoing battle with depression. Now, at the point that he was in his 50s, depression overcame him, and one day he took his life.
yeah,
Actually, at a job site, which was particularly terrible. In his obituary, there were many sentiments of how sad it was that the community lost a business leader and a success. And there, hundreds of people that worked for him that now there was sort of like, having to deal with the company and who's going to take over responsibility of all this stuff. Lots of questions to be answered. But someone came in and said, what an idiot. Who would let a guy with that kind of mental health trouble lead a company like that? And then somebody else said, yeah, he should grow some balls, just
oh
look,
God,
he's got responsibilities, get over it.
yeah,
And then one of Bill's sons came in and said, you're talking about my dad.
yeah,
And I just thought, everybody is a mom or a dad in this. Everybody is a brother or a sister or a child in
Son or
all of
daughter.
this.
Yeah.
In all of this, everyone, every ICE agent out there is the son or daughter of somebody,
Yeah.
or the brother or sister of somebody, and connecting to our humanity. And we're going to get to this in just a minute. Of the things that we can do right is so important for us at this point in time.
There's something about social media, about that, just the way that it works, that it allows for those most negative, the most hate-filled
Yeah.
components to somehow be okay. And it's
Yeah.
not okay. I mean, I laughed at one person said, "Oh, you're such a wimp. Are you about to cry?" And I wrote back to him, they go, "Yes, that's funny. It's such a wimp. Are you about to cry?" And I go, "It is kind of funny. I do sound kind of wimpy on that because, I was emotional. It was an emotional moment in this video, and I'm okay with that, right? But as somebody said, yeah, you can be okay with it, but it still hurts. And that
Yeah.
was real. Yeah, I know I will never meet you. What you say doesn't really impact my life in any meaningful way. You don't know me. You don't know me as a person. And yet you feel you can say these things about me because of one post that I put out that you didn't probably even pay full attention to what I wrote or to any of the
Right.
comments that I made.
Right.
You just piled on to create humiliation, to score some points with your tribe, to get some sort of catharsis for yourself because
Maybe.
you're screaming at the evil person that I am, and that's interesting. So
Or we just have that compulsion that is completely unconscious to just be aligned with our community.
yeah,
So before we get to some things that we can do, what are some things that we shouldn't do? If getting back to our groove question,
yeah, it's very good.
right, division in a world when we have so much in common.
So again, and I'll take this a couple different pieces. So the first is like so many of these responses were um, cut and paste from other posts. Some of them were incredibly long,
Mhm.
super, but they were just cut and paste, cut and paste. Now I cut and paste my own, but I tried to always customize it because I didn't want to have to write the same thing over and over to response to these comments, right? But there were the memes that were brought in. There were, these things that weren't thought out. Um, and that just seems it doesn't add to the conversation because you're not conversing. What
Yeah.
you're doing is you're just cutting and pasting and posting and trying to get as much out there. And so there became a point where I was trying to have conversations with people and I couldn't keep up because none of these people were actually having conversations. They were just mimicking, parroting, cutting and pasting. And that doesn't lend itself to any type of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say to try to get out of the automatic system one responses to everything. Don't try to slow yourself down for just a second so that when something is coming from outside of your tribe, don't automatically discount it. And then if something's coming from inside your tribe, don't automatically support it. Try to pull yourself back for just enough to go, to what degree do I agree with that? To what
Yeah.
degree is that true? Or to what degree do I disagree with that?
Yeah.
Try
And
try to have some individual thinking about this.
it's so easy to like those things that like immediately I go, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're my tribe. I can like you. I can like you. I can like you."
Yeah.
Or I comment, "Way to go." And
Yeah.
have I put any critical thought into that?
Right.
Vice versa.
It's
That whole
hard. It's hard
it
to do
is.
that.
It's really hard because we're wired that way. And so yeah. The one that I think is really again, it's part of this whole thing. It's these don't get baited into trading emotionally charged name calling and one liners. So what I just talked about before, but even
Right.
just using emotionally charged language. And I've talked about this in some of these posts as well. Like, do I call what happened to Alex Preddy a murder or a killing? Because murder has connotations
Yep.
and it's emotionally charged. Now, I think it was, but do I say that if I want to have a conversation with somebody? Do I call somebody a Nazi or a fascist if they disagree
Right.
with me?
Right.
Do
Not a good
they?
way to start a conversation.
Yeah, it doesn't lend itself to saying, "Oh yeah, I want to have a conversation with you." Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Um, One of the most important things that I think about that we should not do is immediately start to spend time on someone's inconsistencies in their argument
yeah,
until we've actually listened to their argument, until we've actually listened to them, until we actually took time to hear what they had to say. And that is oftentimes not going to happen in a social media post exchange,
no.
which gets back to something about this engagement. Well, actually, I'm going to hold off on the what we should do just yet, but don't try to pick something apart because it's not going to change anybody else's mind,
No,
especially if you haven't really listened to them.
no. And that it's so easy to do. And again, our brains go right there. Oh, they're saying this. Oh, but that's an inconsistency with, like you said this last week and you did this and you did that.
Right.
And and then the rest of either the rest of their message or even what comes before that is discounted, is
Yes.
just thrown out.
Right.
And that isn't what we need. We need to have more discourse, more dialogue between to try to understand. Now, there's another important thing on this, which is this idea that all the good ideas are on my side or that my side is absolutely right. And if I go into a conversation
Yeah.
with the idea that I can't learn anything, that my understanding of the situation, maybe even my beliefs about this can't be changed, then there's no use in having a conversation. That
Right.
it goes back to Annie Duke, and we've talked about this, is I'm 99.9% sure is vastly different than 100% sure.
It really is. It
And
really is.
I need to be open to learning something, even if it is apart from my belief. If nothing else, to understand why these people are believing what they're believing. And I think an important part of that is like, where are they focused in on their harm? Oh, I get it. Now I can understand. I don't necessarily align or agree with them, but I can understand a little bit more
Yeah.
because they are concerned. They are very concerned about the damage and harm that is being done by a few
On
people.
right,
Yeah,
on however they see that.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, how could we develop solutions for a complex world with a wide variety of people if we only have one side of an argument? We that you can't have solutions
I know.
in a democracy that work. In fact, I think we have enough evidence throughout the course of history to suggest that when one idea becomes the idea, it doesn't last.
When one party is total control and there's no
Right.
opposition,
Right.
it doesn't lend itself to necessarily being a good outcome.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Okay. So what
okay.
should we do? So those are the don't do's. Let's do a couple of positive things and what's the behavioral science behind things that we can do to reduce polarization?
Understand that I think you said it really good before, that every one of these people, you can align with them politically, you can disagree adamantly with what they're doing, you can even think that these people are at their core evil, but understand that they are human,
Mm.
that they are somebody's son or daughter, that they are somebody's parent, somebody's brother or sister, that they have friends, um, and that they have a lived experience of their own life. And I think that is really important. And not saying that you have to go out and try to, have conversations with people that you vehemently feel are evil, but there are so many more people that are not evil. They're just in their own echo loop. They're seeing
Exactly.
things, and try to have a real conversation with them to understand, at least try to understand why they're feeling this, because there is a reason. They're not doing this most of the time out of um, some reason that is just out of thin air.
Right. I love your example from the social media post when you wrote back to this person that we've known for almost 20 years. And you said, hey, you know me, like I'm not a radical. And that significantly cooled the temperature of the conversation between you in the social media post. So it's
Yeah.
possible. It is absolutely possible. And this reminds me of Nick Epley and all the
Yeah.
work that he's done on talking to strangers and the value of talking to strangers, because just interacting with each other has an incredibly positive effect on our lives.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate the value of interacting and starting with, let's find some place that we can actually agree. Like
Let's find some common ground, which is what we're talking about in this episode. It start with
exactly.
that,
Yeah.
and that was what I was again, and again, how good this was, but that was the intent. It was, look, we're both trying to have a good world to live in, right? And the outcome is, if we're focused, we both want a, a safe, positive neighborhood to live in.
Yeah.
You just see it this way, I see it this way. I think you're wrong, you think I'm wrong. Let's actually figure out where that reality is, because we both can't be right.
That's-
But but we
but you can be right about
but
agreeing
we
on
both
common
could be
ground.
wrong,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's the part that I think is really important. We both can't be right, but we both could be wrong. And let's figure out what that right is, what that reality is.
Yeah. There was some work done by Carl Rogers
Oh,
many years ago, right? And he posited this idea about unconditional positive regard, UPR, this unconditional positive regard. And it starts with the idea that assume that there's good intent. Assume that we're going to start from a good place. And that UPR helps us think about what is actually happening and then what that person's inherent worth is. Again, everyone on all sides of the aisle are children of somebody's parents and maybe brothers and sisters, whatever, right?
yeah.
So there's some inherent worth in each person that is separate from their behavior.
So this is difficult when somebody starts off their comment to you, you're a fucking idiot.
Yes, it is.
But
It is
but
hard.
to that, as much as it is possible, let's let's do that, right?
It's
Which goes
hard.
yeah,
It's
which
hard.
goes into, again, don't get baited into trading these emotionally charged name calling, the one-liners, the different things,
Right.
right? But connect with people on that human side and have that unconditional positive regard for them as much as possible, or at least maybe not unconditional. I will preface this being, living through this now. I can come with the with what Christian said on us, right? Is have a compassionate curiosity for what the other person is saying, what they're going through, which kind of aligns with this unconditional positive regard.
We believe in people and a variety of viewpoints, in part because that's just what the world is. That's what our world is. And having some basic degree of respect for that variety is a really fundamental thing that makes the world that we live in
Yeah.
work.
And I think it's really interesting given how social media, and again, a lot of this is in response to these Facebook posts, is that these are people that I have no connection to that are coming in
Yeah.
and lauding on this. And if you go back to Robin Dunbar, his work on the Dunbar number, this limit of the
Right.
number of people who we can
Right.
actually maintain a real social relationship where you know that person to a degree. I might not know everything about them, but I recognize them. I can have a conversation with them and shared history. And that's about 150. That's from primate research, right? And various
Yeah.
different pieces of this. When it expands out to the 100,000 plus people who saw this, the 600 people who responded to this, it goes beyond that. So I don't have any basis of a relationship with these people.
Right.
So,
Right. And
so
nor do they with you.
nor do they with me. And so trying to actually say I can change somebody's belief or to have a real conversation with those people is a little bit like, saying if I try hard enough, I can jump to the moon, right? It's not going to happen. But those 150 people that I know, many of them who are connected on that social platform, are probably more open to having a conversation,
Yeah. And
probably more open to exploring this and to taking into consideration what I'm doing. And I probably have more consideration of them.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's something that would best be done in person as well.
Yeah,
Social
if you
media,
can.
if you can. Um, we also, just as you've heard, like we believe in dialogue. We
Yeah,
believe in the idea of, and it's not just having tough conversations, because honestly, that scares the hell out of me. you know, but what
I
I
know.
but what I do believe in is listening and being curious and using Kwame Christian's compassionate curiosity as a model to help understand where is someone else coming from,
Yeah,
because then I can start to hear, like you so beautifully explained earlier, Kurt, about how harm can be interpreted differently, or the way that we apply our concerns about harm. But to start with harm as being one of our chief concerns is a good place to start. And
yeah.
understanding where that unfolds, we only get to that point with some compassionate curiosity.
And I think we also believe that, look, we can tone the rhetoric down. We can decrease the hate speech, the vitriol, the you're a effing idiot conversations.
Yeah.
And we can decrease that from our own side as well.
And
I am not a big believer in even these protests that are shouting, Nazis, Gestapos, and it's a tit for tat. It doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't do anything. I think instead of the, fuck ICE, it's like, let's have the chance be, why are you here? What are you achieving? It's the questions that we can ask that actually get people to potentially think, right? And I hope that all of this is leading to this belief, and I have to believe this, and I think I do actually believe this, that things can and will get better, that
yeah.
this isn't
Yeah.
something that we are all in the situation. We're all Americans. We are all here. We all have, to the certain degree, a belief that we are the good guys. I think that's important as well, as everybody
Yeah.
thinks they're the good guys. And let's just get to some shared reality. And then my neighborhood can come back to the beautiful neighborhood that it was. I can go down and not have to worry about, hearing whistles and going, oh my God, am I going to be, getting my donut on Saturday morning and, trying to protect a woman outside? Will I be the next victim? I don't want to live in that world. I don't think anybody wants to live in that world.
Right.
And I think that, if we can get past this and we can have that, then my neighborhood can come back, and that my neighbors, my community, my friends, we're living a life. And yeah, are there bad things happening all the time? Yes. Is the world perfect? No. But this is chaos that, as I said, I don't want to live in a war zone, and we shouldn't have to live in a war zone. And, I want my 16-year-old who I had to walk across the street the other night to babysit to a house that's 3 houses down and across the street. I I don't want to have to do that. I don't think anybody feels like they want to have that happen. So I want this to end. I want it to end peacefully. I want that harm to just go away.
Groovers, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I also want to express some gratitude to our friends and colleagues who have contributed to this discussion, to all the research that's been done that helps us understand the human mind and human behavior with a clearer lens. And that has contributed to our understanding of these kinds of things, because our hope is that things can get better.